Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show. Broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I am Michael McCall.
And I am Zachary Adam Eisenhammer.
And don't worry though, Steve will be joining us during the course of this recording. We decided to kind of get in early this week and get it done after the game. Steve's going to join us later on, probably from parts 2 onwards. But this is our special end of season show. It's the show we love so much. I do anyway. I really enjoy the end of season stuff, and I really enjoy our off season shows as well. So I'm obviously disappointed that the Whitecaps haven't made the playoffs, but at the same time, it's kind of good for us. We'll have a lot more to talk about, I think. But yes, the week started badly for the Whitecaps on Wednesday. It was officially confirmed that the playoffs were done. They were not going to be making it after San Jose and Colorado both won on Wednesday evening. That meant the Whitecaps had a dead rubber against the LA Galaxy on Sunday. And I've used this in the start from a March report for the game, Zach. But basically, this Whitecaps season, it kind of felt a lot like watching the US presidential election results come in this week. It starts off with a little bit of excitement. Then there's a little bit of oh no, fear. Then, it's a bit more, you're kind of positive again. Then there's a waiting game. Then it gets to a stage where you basically just want it to end. And really then the presidential election and the Whitecaps took two different forks in the road. Presidential election had a happy ending. Whitecaps season obviously didn't. But I thought that was a pretty fair analogy for it, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the long and painful and waiting part, I think was right. And yeah, I don't think there's too many celebrations or protests in the streets over the Whitecap season.
I had some fireworks going off. I wasn't sure if that was because the season was done or if it was just some illegal firework parties. But there was some great news, though, from the game. And I think this is really worth celebrating. After the year that 2020 has been, it's finished. We saw the last of Corona today, Zach.
Is Joe Corona retiring?
No, he got subbed off during the second half of the game. So we won't have to deal with Corona anymore in 2020. We maybe not even have to deal with him anymore in 2021. Oh, fantastic.
Did he score against the Whitecaps this year?
No, he did get sent off, so he got an assist for the Whitecaps, which when we're going through all our stats for Player of the Year, he's right up there with one of your choices, I think, is one of the star performers for the team. We will come to that probably in part 3, I think. But the game, MDS promised that they were going to go for it. They wanted to finish on a high. They did. 3-0 win. Yes, it was against a 10-man side in the end, but they were 1-0 up when it was 11v11. 2 goals for Freddie Montero, possibly in his last game as a Whitecap. 1 goal for Lucas Cavallini. We're not going to go through the game very much. It's end of season. It meant nothing in the grand scheme of things, but just a couple of things just to talk about from it. First of all, let's talk about Freddie's brace. Do you feel that is the last goals we're going to see from him in a Whitecaps jersey.
Well, he is out of contract, right?
Yes. Post-game, though, I was trying so hard not to laugh at this. He went, I still have 1 month of my contract to go.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he's got 1 month to make his mind up as to what's happening and just to deal with things.
To make up his mind? I don't think he's making up his mind.
Well, no, he did say some of it's out of his hands. And we'll talk about Freddie when Steve's on and we're analysing the players. But, I mean, he signed off in style, 2 goals.
Yeah, good for him. The one thing, though, that I forget how many games he played this year. The Whitecaps played, was it 22 or 23?
Well, they played 23 plus 1 in the MLS's back that doesn't count towards the standing. So technically they played 24.
But he wasn't even there for any of those 4.
No.
So he good game today, match winner, what do you call it? Man of the match, the Colin Miller Award. And nice finish on his second goal, first goal, chest in, across, whatever. But he did only score in 3 games, right? He had 5 goals, but he only scored in 3. I know he had 5 assists or whatever, but it's not really enough. I don't think. I don't think this season, as much as he was a contributor to some of their best moments, no question asked there. I still don't think that you can bring him back, especially on anywhere near the kind of money that he's currently on. So I don't see them bringing him back. I could be wrong. I just don't think I don't think the numbers are going to work out for him, or are going to be what he wants, or better than what he can get elsewhere. And I think that's what's gonna. I think even Dos Santos can play it that way, or Axel can play it that way. They can say, look, we'd like to bring you back, but we want to bring you back on this amount, and then he'll say, and then I can see him saying, thank you for the offer, but I know I can get that plus X somewhere else.
Yeah, which I mean he can. I mean, 5 goals and 5 assists in 16 games. Pretty good unless you delve into it and you see that before this game, he had no goals or assists in 6 of 7 games. So it's when you break it down like that. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit more when we're kind of doing the individual player analysis. But I mean, good for him to finish with 2 goals. And the last goal of the season was a lovely finish from him. Cava as well got his 6th of the season to win the Mobilio Golden Boot Award. So I mean, that was a good thing. Those were all pluses from the game, along with a couple of big saves from Evan Bush later on in the game. And we'll also analyse Evan Bush's kind of impact on the team and what his future might be. But ultimately, what that meant was the Whitecaps missed the playoffs by 3 points. I know it's points per game. It's a little bit harder to kind of work that out. If we kind of look at that though, San Jose got the 8th and final spot in the West. 1.3 was their points per game. But they only finished 3 points more than the Whitecaps, who ended up with 1.17. So it looks a big difference, but really it boils down to just being 1 win. And I'm sure we can pick through the season and decide, they could have got points here or there. And of course, the annoying thing is, when you break it down that way, and you look at the fact that we were just 3 points behind San Jose, you then look at that collapse against the Earthquakes of the MLS's back tournament that took 3 points from us, gave it to San Jose, massive swing there. That, again going down to simplistic ways, is what really cost us a place in the postseason. Meaning they finished the season with 9 wins, 14 defeats and no draws in MLS regular season play. They did get that draw against Sporting Kansas City in the MLS's back, but that doesn't count. So, I mean, 14 defeats turns some of those, Zach, into wins, and you're looking at a whole different, or not even into wins, but into draws, and you're looking at a whole different possible tale for the Whitecaps.
Yeah, every season is like this, right? You look back on moments where you could have picked up more points, or maybe dropped more points, and that would have impacted where you finish in the standings. That's no different this year for Vancouver, and it's probably just as painful as normal for Vancouver. This year, especially with the rule change coming down when it did. Ultimately, I think. I mean, there's a saying, the table doesn't lie, right? And even though it's a points per game table, I still think the table doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And I think that they probably ended up, where they should. Can I say one more thing from the game today?
Sure.
The one thing I want to say for this, because I think there's the cynical or negative way to look at the game and saying, look, you're playing maybe the worst, most likely the worst ever LA Galaxy side that's ever existed. They played almost an hour or almost 50 minutes.
Yeah, 50 minutes.
Down or up a man. Okay. So the cynical side could say, of course they won 3-0. They're playing one of the worst teams in the league, and they were up a man for over half the game. But on the other side of that, I think both the players and the coaching staff need to be given full credit for like coming out in this game and actually working for it. Like they actually fought. Like in I think it was the game before this, it felt a little bit like maybe not the effort, but like the will to win, the desire wasn't on the same level as it was on a day like today. And that's, I think, in large part due to the coaching staff getting them ready for the occasion, for what it was, and for going out and performing the way that they would like them to perform on a regular basis. And so I think they deserve credit for that. But as you said, not enough to make the points per game playoff table.
Yeah, it must have been so disheartening, and MDS said it was. The players were pretty down on Thursday after knowing that was the season over. I mean, you had all the will they, won't they play with LA and San Jose, and then I watched that game, and as it played out, it was horrible sitting watching it. So as from the players, I don't know how they must have felt. So they were down, but they picked themselves up. They wanted to have pride in their final performance, and I think they did that. And it has been a season with a lot of adversity, and that is something that we will touch on in this show. But just to kind of look at the standings in the West, Sporting Kansas City ended up topping the pile, 39 points in the end. The same number of points as Seattle and Portland, but their points per game was better. They played 21 games, Seattle played 22, Portland played 23. So Eric Hurtado did well for them today. So they've won it. The top four is Sporting Kansas City, Seattle, Portland and Minnesota. So that's your seeded teams. And then the other four teams from the West making it in is Colorado, who only played 18 games in the end, but still managed 28 points. Then you've got Dallas, LAFC, who are seeded 7th now, which is crazy. And San Jose Earthquake getting that 8th spot. Now, I jokingly asked, just to get any clarification on this, what happens if one of those playoff teams gets COVID in the next week and they get kicked out? Would the Whitecaps get a chance to come in as a late replacement? No. So all hopes are done. That can't happen. If a team gets COVID now, that's them gone, sadly. So let's hope that doesn't happen. It feels like it's going to be tough to get through the playoffs without one team suddenly being hit with this. You've got 18 teams in the playoffs this season. That's 69% of the league. And the Whitecaps didn't make it into that 69%, which when you break it down like that, it's like more than 2/3 of the teams got in, and the Whitecaps aren't one of them. So that puts a different shine on it, Zach.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. You didn't make a joke there.
So having a quick look at the East, just before we kind of wrap up our standings chat. Supporters' Shield winners, Philadelphia Union, 47 points from their 23 games, finishing 3 points ahead and 0.13 points per game off over to TFC. 10 teams making it in. Montreal sneaking in 9th place. We'll come to them shortly. Nashville, the team from the West, finishing 7th in the East. Maybe they should have had just an overall table of points per game for East and West, since it was a whole unbalanced schedule. If you look at it that way, and the top 18 teams were going in, the Whitecaps would get in 17th, because they had a better points per game record in the end than Montreal and Inter, who made it in from the East.
You're stirring the pot, man.
Well, it's to me, if you've got an unbalanced season and everything's just all up in the air like that, why not just have a final schedule like that? Because the Whitecaps ended up playing teams from the East. They had 6 games against teams from the East, actually 7, because they had Chicago in the MLS Backers Cup. So 7 of their 23 games were against teams that they couldn't take points from. That's just ridiculous. Then they didn't play games against Colorado, Minnesota and Dallas, who did make it into the playoffs. So they couldn't... Well, you've got two sides of this. They couldn't take points from them, but equally they couldn't take points from the Whitecaps. So you're kind of balancing that up. But I mean, the whole season wasn't fair, so... I don't know. I don't want to sound it like sour grapes, and I'm pretty sure they'd have been bounced in one. I think it would have been nice for them to do it. But there are 2 Canadian teams in. So, I mean, we've talked before, and we'll talk some more about the adversity that the team have faced with being away from home. But it's been the same story for Toronto and for Montreal. And they've both managed to overcome that adversity and get into the playoffs. Now, I watched the Montreal game today. They really just needed a point to get in against DC. But they trailed twice. But then they fought back twice, and then they ended up taking the lead for the 3-2 win. I think it's excellent. And when you look at the fact that they, like the Whitecaps, they've been playing away from Canada, big achievement for Montreal and also TFC, Zach.
Yeah, it was nice to see Montreal get in today. Romel Kyoto got that late winner for them. I think you saw you tweeting about Thierry Henry and his reaction.
Yeah, I jumped on the post game with Thierry. We'll play a little bit of that in a sec, but I mean, I think it's with everything that they've been through as well, and the fact that he came out and said that he still feels they need a true number 9 striker. And if someone's going to know about a team that needs a striker, it's a guy that was one of the best strikers in the world. So, I mean, you look at a guy like Kyoto who's banging the goals in, but he feels that they need that, and that's going to get addressed now in the off-season.
Kyoto, the weird thing about Kyoto is he's not a real number 9.
Yeah.
Like he's been more of a... I mean, they've kind of converted him to play more centrally. Again, you have a great mentor there, Thierry Henry, who did kind of the similar thing, right? Going from the wing to playing in the middle. So hopefully you kind of assume he's learning from someone who's essentially a legend at doing that. It's interesting when you listen to people from Montreal talk about the season, because the vibe and the kind of the overall feel of listening to people in both Montreal and Vancouver talk about their season and the hardships they've had to go through and all they had to go through are quite similar. And it's almost like they both feel that they both had the worst possible things to face in MLS this year. It's almost like they're in a battle for who had it worse. Because when I listen to some people in Montreal talk, they feel definitely that no one's had it worse than the Impact.
It's like the old Monty Python sketch. I don't know how familiar you are with that, when it's all the old men sitting around the table where they're saying, "Oh, like when I was younger, we used to have to bath in a tin bath in front of the fire," and then the next person would be like, "You had a fire. We didn't even have a fire. We just had to wash ourselves just standing in the cold," and then the next person would be like, "You had water." So I guess it's like that.
Very, very much like that. So I think they had a very difficult season. Montreal, like we said, didn't really provide Thierry Henry with the true striker. Wanyama, although he scored a goal today, I think has been a bit of a mixed bag. More pro than con, but I think he hasn't maybe, no pun intended, but impacted things the way that I think many people would have thought, and definitely I think their club would have hoped for. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But no, I think it's good for them, and they are the kind of team that, as much as I could see them going out in the first round, I could also see them making a run, because they have, aside from that true number 9, they have enough pieces, I think, to do some damage and to catch some teams out. And if like Kyoto plays at his level or above, if Bojan, who's and a tremendously talented footballer, especially in comparison to many players in MLS, if he can turn things on, And then you obviously have like Wanyama and Piet, and obviously they have the young keeper, but they do have. I think they do have a potential to catch some people out. Obviously, they lost big pieces, Bush and Diop and Kaider and all that kind of.
Piet got sent off today as well, so he's going to miss their first game.
Does that impact the playoffs?
Yeah, he got sent off in the 92nd minute.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I missed that. Forget about what I said about them making a run.
Yeah, that was a tough blow. But I mean, yeah, but you've got a winning mentality and you've got a winner in charge like Henry. I mean, that's going to help boost the team as well. So let's just round this section off by just playing you a little bit of the post-game audio from Thierry Henry, just with his thoughts of making the playoff and the battle that this season has been for the Impact.
I'm wondering if you could please address the character or what your team showed you down the stretch, trailing by a goal, and if you could also just talk about how important it was. You talked about making the playoffs. Now that it's finally accomplished, how important was that? In fact,
very important. We said it all year long. The story of the game is a bit the story of our season. We had to battle to go through. Not an easy game, as you saw. They disturbed a lot of teams recently. And we were losing a half time. And we had to come back again and we had to battle again. And so we did it. So the character of that team, I said to the guys at the end of the game, it's nothing to do with tactics. Like I said to you all the time, if the desire is right, then you can perform. And the desire was right, although you still can obviously get better on a lot of stuff. But when the desire is right, things goes your way.
I know this is just part one of what you're looking to achieve this season. You've made it into the playoffs now, but can you maybe just take a little bit of time just now to kind of reflect on what this year has been like for the team, to come through this adversity, to be away from home for so long, and to still show that fighting spirit today that you want the season to continue? Can you just talk a little bit just about what this season has been like for you?
In all fairness, it's difficult to talk about it now because the emotion that went through the game, up until 20 minutes to go, we were not in. 20 minutes after, you have your destiny in your hand because you win the game. But you guys know what we had to deal with, what everybody has to deal with, not only in sport, but in life. It wasn't easy at all. But today, shall I say, sorry, we showed character. And I keep on saying it since the beginning of the season. Forget tactics. I say it so many times. You obviously send your team with a plan because you have to, because you play against someone, and because you need to have a plan for them to know what they need to execute. But when the desire is there, like you saw tonight, that's for me the most important thing, and that was there. It was a difficult year, yes. To go in details into it, my head is all over the place right now, as you can imagine. Going through that game and changing the system so many times, to see how we could change the game. But the thing that comes back for me is that group suffered a lot this year, and to have something to look at and say that at least we are in the playoff and let's see what can happen next. That's very good.
So Thierry Henry there, just sharing some thoughts. Just a final bit for this section, Zach. I watched every game, I think, apart from when there was 2 in the one day during MLS's back. I was really into it. I was excited for it. Since it's come back, I have not watched as much MLS football as I did in the summer. And I don't know really what the main reason for that is, but I'm excited for the playoffs. It is disappointing Vancouver's not there, but I mean, do you go into this excited or are you past caring about that really?
Yeah, no, I honestly don't have a lot of excitement. And similar to you, like I've not watched a lot of like live full MLS games this year, like I have in previous years. I have DAZN, so it's not for lack of access. I have TSN, so it's not like I can't watch it easily. But no, most of my football focus has been watching a lot of Bundesliga, which has really been awesome.
Last thing we'll say about MLS is a little tidbit that Jake Nowinski gave up in his post-game chat tonight, which was, I was asking the guys some questions about what's next for them and stuff like that. whether he was going to be staying in Vancouver. So he's going back to New Jersey because obviously you don't want to get caught up in more quarantine and have to, as he said, stay alone in my little apartment on my own while his wife that he's hardly seen is back in New Jersey. But he did say, and then it looks like we're going to have a longer than usual off-season, which is kind of indicating that MLS, their plans are going to be not a March return, and maybe they're going to wait till the pandemic kind of calms down a little bit. Maybe they kick off with another kind of MLS's back tournament or something. That would certainly be interesting.
If they want to have a fullish, semi-normal season, how long do you think they can wait?
Can I just clarify, was that foolish with a U or with a double O?
No, sorry, fullish. Fullish schedule. Sorry. Yeah, foolish is accurate, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I guess if you had a really intense MLS's back tournament, so it's longer, then you could maybe do that. But maybe they're going to look at a shorter season again next year. Who knows? Let's just hope they somehow find a way to make it more balanced. Because right now, it's hard to see the season not starting with the Canadian teams just playing each other over and over again, like we saw in August and so on.
Oh, totally. If it was going to begin in end of February, beginning of March, yeah, that would seem like the way it would probably go. But how much? Like I can see them saying, "Hey, we're going to give you guys an extra break," or I can see like Jake's involved with the players' union and them saying, "Hey, like we know it was a shortened season, but like these guys need time with their families, and you're going to need, I can see them starting late because they're going to say, hey, you're checking in at the same time, but you're going to have a 2 week like a proper 2 week quarantine, like at the beginning, and but how much later can they go? Like I can see April. I can see starting in April, maybe May, maybe May. But then again, it's not going to be a 34 game season, I don't think.
Anyway, I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the off season. That is it for this part. The rest of tonight's show is going to be looking at the Whitecaps season. We're going to be handing out our end of season awards. We're going to be having our look at who should stay, who should go, who should get loaned out, stuff like that. We'll be also adding some Panda style to everything as well. And we'll be back with all of that after this.
Hi, I'm Marc Dos Santos, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's tonight's song by this month's Artist of the Month here at AFTN, English band Idols, with a song from their second album, Joy as an Act of Resistance, released in 2018. And that was one of my favourite songs from the album, one of my favourite Idol songs altogether. That was Never Fight a Man with a Perm. I used to have a perm when I was younger. My mum used to perm my hair. But, yeah, let's not get into that. Let's just get back to the football chat. And I'm delighted to say we're joined for this part by Steve Pander. Welcome to the show tonight, Steve.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I had to take that, that annual 1 hour shower to cleanse myself of the Whitecap season. So that's the reason I'm late getting on the show.
So this season, we touched on it there, that the Whitecaps finished with a record of 9 wins, 14 defeats. Those 9 wins, one more than last season, having played 11 games less, giving them a win percentage of 39% compared to 23% from last year. Now, we're going to talk about positives and negatives from the season. Obviously, the big negative is they didn't make the playoffs. But, I mean, Steve, you've got to look at that and take that as a positive. But everything they went through to get 9 wins, I mean, it can only be a good thing to take from this season.
Yeah, and especially with the lineup that they had and everything like that. And like you said, how many games? I think they played one game in front of supporters at home. Add another 3 games without supporters, so that's a total of 4 games, and they were able to pull off those many victories. It's definitely an improvement over last year. The only issue that you have is that they weren't in a position to get a lot of draws because most of their losses were like by 2 to 3 goals. A lot of them.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like a lot of their losses were by 2-3 goals. So they weren't even in a position to get those draws that would have helped them and boosted them up in the point totals.
No, that's very fair. And Zach, last year, when we did our end of season show and we spoke about MDS and everything like that, we said we needed to see improvement. Obviously, nobody knew exactly what kind of weird year 2020 was going to be, but I think we have seen improvement. I know there's going to be some fans out there that feel there has been no improvement, but we've got more wins from less games. We'll come to the negatives, such as the defence and stuff like that as well, but we've got a couple of guys that seem to know how to score. We've got a core to build the team around. And last year, bottom of the West. This season, 9th out of the 12 teams in the West. I'm doing my positivity stuff first of all. I mean, do you take it as positives to take from this year? Do you see it as an improvement for the team?
Man, it's hard because, it's how can something not be an improvement on last year? Because last year was really, but like it's a pandemic year, so it's like that's in part an excuse for things maybe not being as good as they could have or should have been. But yeah, I mean, it is totally fair to say that, yeah, like you said, there are some promising signs. I think Lucas Cavallini didn't have the campaign he probably wanted to. Missed the MLS's Backus tournament. It was 2 red cards, I want to say. Or a red card and accumulation.
Yeah, it was just one actual red.
Yeah. So, but missing, I think he missed 2 matches due to discipline. So, and then he missed a lot of chances, including a lot of penalties, or a number of penalties. We got to see glimpses, I think, of what he's capable of, and I think that is a positive. But it's hard. I think it's hard to see. It's hard to see things as like super positive because they have still yet or continue to fail to address the biggest concern in the team, and that is the midfield. And obviously the major piece in that is a creative attacking person who can both be the person that the play goes through and is the main creative force in the side, but also someone who themselves can score goals. But it's not even just that. Like, that is by far the biggest need. If they brought that in right now, I don't know if the other pieces that they have are good enough to be a 6 and an 8, right? If you bring in a 10. I don't know if they're at the level that they need to be. They've shown glimpses of it. They have some promise, obviously, with Baldissimo, which I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about him today.
Yes.
But they just don't feel good enough in that sense, and so it's hard to feel positive about things when there's so many negative things, and then the pandemic is supposed to be this kind of like neutralizer or make everything feel okay, but it really doesn't.
Well, it's certainly not a neutralizer when there's a lot of unbalance and you've got the You've got teams that can't enjoy home comforts, and you've got teams travelling on the day of a match where they have to leave by a certain time of day, and then they've got hours to just kill in a hotel in a foreign city. So, I mean, there's certainly... I don't think it was an equaliser of teams, because some teams certainly had it better than others. I mean, we touched on this in the first part, Steve, which you won't have heard, but if you look at the adversity, Toronto and Montreal faced that similar adversity, but they both managed to make the playoffs. Is that too simplistic a way of looking at things, that they were just better at coping with it?
They had a better overall team lineup, and also I think the East is a little bit weaker than the West in some ways. The other thing is you're probably talking about the unbalanced schedule before. This is unbalanced playoffs. There's 10 teams that make the East and 8 teams that make the West. Like, who came up with that? Like, what's the point of that? That makes no sense either. So, so I don't think Montreal would have made it if it was 8 teams. Are they 9th or 10th? Or
they were 9th.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have made it if it was an actual 8-team playoff like it should be. Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand that concept of why one. I understand they have 2 extra teams.
Yeah,
I totally get that, but that still doesn't make a difference. Like, you take the 8 best teams. Just because the conference has 2 extra doesn't mean it hasn't happened before. There's been other years where there's an extra team in the West or something like that. They didn't add a team to the playoffs for that. So yeah, it doesn't make sense to me why they would do it. But overall, I think that those 2 teams are better. They have a more balanced team, and the key crucial thing for me, and I've said it all year long, they have a better midfield. Both of them. They have a competent midfield that can both play defensively, help off the back line, and also be able to attack and be able to build the attack and get the ball to the people that can score.
Yeah. I mean, that's definite. I think the imbalance from the East and the West as well was just any added chance to get David Beckham's Miami side into the playoffs, and it worked. So there we go. I mean, if you look at the Whitecaps season, you can basically break it down into 4 parts. And we're not going to do month by month or anything like that. We saved those, obviously, for our December shows. But you had the first 2 games that were played pre-lockdown. So you had 2 games, a home and an away game, 1 win, 1 defeat, played in front of fans, some normality. Then you had the big break. Then you had MLS's back. So there was 4 games played there. Then you had this weird, just travelling, playing Canadian teams, 2 of which were in the Eastern Conference. So you had 6 games there. So that was like 12 of the 23 games played, so just over half of the season. And then you've got the 11 games where you're away from Vancouver, you're based in Portland, you're playing some in Portland, you're playing some elsewhere, you're travelling, everything like that. They had 3 pre-seasons. Mark likes to kind of mention a lot. So, I mean, it is tough. And if you break down that schedule a bit further, only 6 of the 23 games were against teams that didn't make the playoffs. So it's a pretty tough schedule. Those were 3 against LA Galaxy, where they won 2 and they lost 1, and they really should have had 2 wins and a draw there. 2 against RSL and 1 against Chicago. You also had 6 games against the top 3 teams in the West. So, I mean, again, that's a big chunk of it. Touched on that earlier, we didn't get to play the likes of Minnesota and Colorado and Dallas and take points off that. So, I mean, there's certainly arguments that you can make, Zach, about all of that. But, I mean, ultimately, if you look at where it went wrong, it boils down, there's no sugarcoating it. We just weren't simply good enough.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even in the high moments of the season, or even in some of the high moments of the season, like the football was not like anything to write home about, and the results were, even some of those results were like not that impressive, I guess. Like, yeah, you nicked a game away to LA, who turned out to be an awful team, you know, some of the MLS's back stuff, like, it was encouraging, right? But it wasn't like it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't the quality of football hasn't been. I think because of the limitations in the squad, the quality of football has not been the kind of football that people are hoping for, nor the kind of football that MDS has talked about, or at least holistically.
Well, talking to MDS, let's bring you a little bit of audio from him just now. He spoke to media on Friday. That was his first chat after the Whitecaps playoff hopes were officially ended. So I'm going to bring you a little bit of audio where he's just kind of touching on analysing the season, but in particular, what's next, what should be next. Let's hear just now from the gaffer, MDS. I think most of us know why and understand why you couldn't get the consistency that you wanted with the team, with everything that you were going through, having basically 3 pre-seasons, everything like that. But I guess you could also simplistically look at it that in the last 2 games, yourselves and Colorado both had to play Seattle and Portland. They managed to get 6 points. Whitecaps didn't take any. Is that just too simplistic a way to look at it?
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at it like that. And I didn't even look at that, but you saying it like that, it's also very fair. I don't think the fight was between us and Colorado, because Colorado and the points per game with the so low amount of games they played was fair to say that I think they had a lot of the chances to go in. Our biggest chance was San Jose. So I was more focused on that. I think, us, Seattle and Portland, there's also the schedule that is very different. We played that Seattle game in a very unfair scheduling that I was very vocal about. But the Portland games was no excuse. It was equal time of recovery, equal time to play. The only factor is both of the games were played at Providence Park, but there were close games that one team had more of that finishing touch than the other. But it also confirms things that we can't hide from and we have to become better at. I think this year, I feel that the amount of wins we had was going in the right direction. If this was a 34 game schedule, possibly we would have reached the 12, 13 wins. But what needs to be better is we went from being the team that drew the most games in the West to the team that didn't draw games. And that's a weird position to be in and very new for me. But how can we change those losses where 3 or 4 are draws, and now you have the points to still be alive and fight for a place? It was hard to get the consistency and the model of play that we wanted, but I think in the last 2 months, apart from the LAFC game and maybe that Seattle game, we had a lot of moments of closer to what I think we have to be about in a more consistent way.
We've talked about everything this season that has sort of led you to where you are in terms of like having to relocate to another country, the unbalanced schedule, going to MLS's back without so many players. That has also affected how you sort of assess the team, I would imagine. Do you feel you had enough of a sample size to really figure out who you want to take forward?
Yeah, JJ, it's been great. That part's been great. And I've also been able to discover guys during this period and know guys better and know kind of the leadership inside the group better. I'll tell you this, it's hard to lose a goalkeeper like Max, and we want to. Max is training and Max is being involved in every exercise. So that's positive for the future. But then you get to discover a kid like Thomas in a pressure moment, so that's very positive. Or a kid like Michael Baldissimo that I wanted to loan out in the beginning of the year. And then we see his growth as a player throughout training, and then I come in games and he answers and he shows the big margin to progress also as a player. So all of those things were important. And yes, we assess. Yes, we have a very good idea of what we want to do moving forward. And always with the intention of making the team better and the club better, because the Western Conference is hard. You always start with the 5 Sharks that are LAFC, LA Galaxy, Seattle, Portland, Sporting Kansas City. Every year they're there to compete for top spots. And then we also have to do what we have to do as a club to get closer, to get there all the time. So we're working on that. And at the same time, we're proud of the core that we have, the mentality that we have. And now we have to make sure that the guys that join have the right mindset and not only be good players, but also with the right character and right mindset for the group.
Kind of not to look too far ahead, but what's kind of going to get a head start so you can start fresh?
The number one thing we're focusing on right now is the responsibility that we have on those X amount of players that are going to join us for next year. In one of the spots, we have a DP spot that we're taking extremely seriously. So all of our focus are on those 3-4 key new guys that we need to bring to the team. And not only talking about quality, but also experience, also personality that these players could bring, leadership. We're looking for all those tools. But then, of course, we're looking for a couple that could make our team, make our team tick, in these key moments. And our focus as of Monday morning is going to be to do our exit meetings, medicals, go through the process and the ending of this season, and start focusing very, very well with who's joining and how can we become better.
Kind of just a quick follow-up on that. You mentioned experience, and obviously, a lot's been made of how young your team is this year, and you talked maybe about, how the inconsistency in results, how you have a lot of wins, but also how a lot of losses is targeting veteran players, especially in those core spine pieces, something your staff is really looking at this offseason?
Yes. It's you said everything that we're thinking. Yes, we feel that there's a couple of, even if we have spots for young DPs, and those spots we're working on to bring the best young DPs possible, but we need to have a few pieces that bring more maturity, more leadership in the key moments. That's important for us to move forward.
He's the gaffer. You can try it on with him. He's the gaffer. Even when he's on a limb. He's the gaffer. When his back's against the wall, has the answer to it all. He's the gaffer.
So the gaffer MDS there. And just before we talk about some of the things that came out of that, I also want to talk about some of the stuff that he said after the LA game tonight as well. So he's mentioned there and after the game about the fact that they've got one DP spot that they are seriously looking at getting filled. Now, we're not talking young DPs, we're talking proper designated player. He's also kind of stressed the need for experience, the older player, because they have got quite a young team, and wanting to get something done within MLS. He said that last year when I asked him about it, wasn't able to get it done. Might be even harder to get it done depending on border restrictions and everything like that as well. Although you've got the flip side of maybe folk want to live in a safer country, but that's the whole other discussion. We have to fill this DP role with an actual quality DP, Steve. It's like we're talking, if we're looking at 2 or 3, Ali Adnan sounds like he might not be going anywhere. Lucas Cavallini. This DP has to be a difference maker.
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be somebody that can elevate the players around him. And the position is obvious, which position it should be. Somebody that and that will improve players like Cavallini and Dahomey and all those other players around him. That's what you need. You need a guy that can run the attack, but also be a solid leader on the pitch too, to bring everybody up. Like I basically essentially a Freddie Montero type, but more of a playmaker than Freddie Montero is. So, but it's somebody in the midfield, somebody that can go. You want a guy that can be play like a number 10, but also have the athleticism of a guy that's box to box that can help out in the back as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear where the gaps are, and MDS has talked about 3 to 4 key spots, and we'll delve into some of those when we're looking at who should stay, who should go, stuff like that. I mean, he talked after the game tonight about needing to grow, having to be better. He said, we're not a team that is good enough to go on the pitch and only play at 70, 75%. They have to be switched on 100% all the time. And we've talked about that in previous years. That is tough to do week in, week out, to be at your very best. We talked about that during Robbo's time. Robbo talked about that. And it's like now, all these years later, we're still having that discussion. What is maybe surprising to some, but I think another positive, is I asked him if there's a bit of relief that the season is over and he gets to spend time with his family. And he joked, well, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but no, I'm just in full recruitment mode right now. I am just focusing on building this team to be better for next year. And I think, Zach, that's all the fans want to really hear in one regard, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and you really want to see that delivered with some key players and the actual players that we want and need.
Yeah, my understanding from my conversations with Marc are that Mrs. Dos Santos is a very understanding woman when it comes to his commitment to his profession.
Well, I think she'd have to be. I mean, when I spoke to him earlier this year, his advice to young managers was, don't get married.
Yeah, there's a tangent I won't take on that at this moment. But no, I mean, yeah, I think people will be encouraged to hear that. And that's proper. That's like the way it should be. That's what should be happening. The season's over, and it's, 1, 2, at least 3 months, or if Jake's right, maybe 4 months or more of recruiting better players, because it's obvious to everyone, including MDS, that the squad is not good enough and needs to be better. And he, whatever his official title connection to that is, he plays a significant role in that. And him and Axel and whoever else they're working with will need to do a lot of hard work to identify, if they haven't already, and bring in players. And like we've heard from like people in like Toronto in the past, bringing in players is not it's not a simple thing. It's not like when you play Football Manager or FIFA and you click a few buttons and send a few emails. It's more involved than that. There's more to it than that. And so especially if they're going to bring in, like you said, Michael, like an actual designated player who makes more than a TAM player can make.
I feel they have to make a big splash with this DP. I mean, everyone's going to want a player that they've heard of, and there's not going to be a guarantee that that's what it's going to be, because we've talked about this so many times, I know, but a guy like Diego Valeri, how many folk would have had any idea who he was? Look at the impact he's had on Portland and throughout MLS. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a big name, just needs to be a guy that gets the job done. I mean, if you look at the needs of the team, MDS has talked about 3 to 4 key pieces. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. But he wants the guys that join to have the right mindset. He said the number one goal is the responsibility right now is that the X amount of players that come in that will join next year, that's what they're focusing on. So that's their main stuff. They're taking the DP spot extremely seriously. Out of the 3 to 4 key players, he's wanting to see quality, but also personality, experience, leadership, coupled with guys that can make this team better and more mature. So it does look like, Steve, that we've got a good young core. Now we're actually going to be looking at getting some of the older heads that can help get this team over the line.
Yeah, and you talk about 3 to 4 positions, and they're very identifiable where the positions are. They need 2 people in the midfield. They need a guy on the wing. They need a guy at fullback. Like one of the 2 positions. It depends on who's staying and who's going. But that's essentially where they need to improve. And they can improve those 4 spots, then they are a playoff contender. Not a title contender at this point, but definitely a playoff contender. And getting experience, we've said it multiple times, they do need experience. I don't think they need that much experience. They need people that know how to win. And it doesn't have to be an older player that knows how to win. It could be a younger player who's been in an environment that's where the players won. And so they need that kind of mentality. They need that mentality where if they go down a goal, they're not going to hang their heads like they've done a lot of times this season, where they can actually have that fighting chance to come back from those.
Yeah, I mean, MDS also talked about looking to fully utilise the young DP slots as well. That's going to be changing next year. That's something I'm sure we'll delve in over the course of the off-season. But, I mean, we looked last week, Zach, about Kyle Larin. Those rumours have started again. Where would he fit in? Would he be able to play alongside Cava? I didn't actually know. The last few games he's been playing out and doing really well with Besiktas on the wing. So he's kind of moved onto a wing role with Besiktas. I think it's 4 straight games now that he's got a goal as well.
Yeah, I don't have BN Sports, so I haven't been watching those games. I hadn't known he was on the wing. Again, he does not strike me as someone with enough haste to be an out-and-out winger, but Besiktas, the times I've watched Besiktas over the year, watching Atiba and stuff, especially in the Champions League, they do some things that are maybe not super traditional because they're trying to play to their players' strengths. So maybe there's something that they see to maximize either Kyle or the overall team's makeup and characteristics in the way that they're doing. But yeah, I don't know. Can any of you see him as a winger in MLS?
Well, the thing is, it depends on, like, people. When they put out those lineups, they could be lined up as a winger, but that doesn't mean he's going to play like that when the ball's in the the final third. He could actually like cut in and be in the box at that point. It's not like, and then the fullback moves up and he's actually the true winger in that attack. So it's a matter of you can line up however you want. It's the same thing. I think we talked preseason about how Liverpool has 3 players across the front, like, and you don't know who's going to be the number 9 or the wingers on a particular attack. Forget a particular game. They alternate and go back and forth, and one time Salah's the middle, one day Mane's in the middle, and one day Firmino's in the middle. You don't know who's the striker and and that's where I think they want to go. Of course, having Cavallini, you can't really do that kind anymore because he's not going to play out wide. So that's why I think if they want to bring in Larin, if they feel he can be a winger, but if they want to attack him as like a striker when they're in the attacking mode, then yeah, that maybe works. But I still think that I prefer a winger that can not only score, but also be able to curl the ball in. Because we saw today, I didn't talk, obviously I wasn't there for the game, but a couple of the crosses, you got guys kind of like Cavallini, Montero, and whoever replaces Montero that can bang in the goals from in close. And that they were missing that for a lot of the year.
Yeah, I mean, if Larin can bring his form of Besiktas to MLS from wing play, Cava up front with Larin on one side and Dahomey on the other, that's an exciting front 3.
And if they have that number 10 that can get them the ball, then that's really makes them more dangerous too. So that's the most important part of what it doesn't make a difference what you put out in those 3 if you don't have that guy in the middle to feed him.
Yeah, again, this is a tactical conversation too, because if you want to play with true wingers and a number 10, you're going to need maybe 2 6s instead of a 6 and an 8 to make it work in MLS, I feel. But and again, I don't think currently the Whitecaps have players that can do that at the level they would need to be successful, anyways. So yeah, I mean, it's a bigger tactical conversation, and this is where MDS and Axel have to continue to work together on the recruitment side of things, right? There's a lot of conversations that go into making these decisions about which player to bring in and how they are ideally going to be used. Obviously, sometimes things change once they're in camp or in the team and you're figuring things out. But yeah, and like you, I think you both said, this is so significant because I think they do. I think you said it, Michael. They do need to bring in. They're at a place where they need to at least partially throw off their old approach of, hey, yeah, we don't want to spend extra money on a name that's just a name that might excite some people. I think you're right. I think they do need to make a signing that will not be more sizzle than steak, but there will be some sizzle with it. Like there will be some kind of wow or drawing factor from that signing. I mean, probably to a different level than they've done before. Even like a Kenny Miller, right? Like a lot of people knew Kenny Miller. There was some sizzle to that. Probably more substance than sizzle, right? But so something like that, but to the next level.
Yeah, someone like a Scotty Arfield could possibly do that, but I can't see him wanting to leave Rangers now with the season that Rangers are having. But yeah, it needs something like that. No matter who it is at the ad, if it's not somebody that folk have seen on TV, I'm sure they'll be shot all over by sections of the fan base. That's just seems to be how it is in Vancouver.
On the pregame show on the radio today, actually, they were talking about that, because of course Colin Miller's involved, and they were talking about Shad was on as well, and they were talking about Arfield's name came up. Of course, Colin brought it up and brought up the fact that I think Rangers won 8-0 this morning or something. But the thing I totally forgot about him is he's 32. I think one of them said.
Yes.
Which I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I was like, no, he definitely can't be the player you're bringing in to like shepherd this midfield for longer than a year. Or so. Like, I mean, not that some players can't do that at that age, but.
Well, I mean, Axel's made a thing about saying he ideally not players over 30, but I do think he needs to change that and at least have a couple over 30.
Yes, and like that's the thing is another way that the Whitecaps have been really poor is you do need to have some good solid MLS like caliber players, right? Like I think back to Beta and Harvey, right? Like they were solid MLS players, right? They weren't necessarily totally world beaters, but they were at like a high quality level for MLS. MLS veterans, knew the league, all that kind of stuff, really professional. And you saw what Jordan, how he contributed to LAFC later, and what Beta did with Toronto and then LAFC. Like Vancouver has also not been good at getting that kind of player in. Instead, they've had like the Andy Rose, like again, no offense to Andy Rose. I think he's a really nice fellow and can fill a number of roles in the squad. But I don't think one of them is, starter on a team that's going to be competitive in the league, right?
No, I mean, I'm big fan of Andy, but when you've got him as your starting centre-back, that's kind of says a lot about where your team is right now. But that's changed as the season went on. That's it for this part. MDS clearly feels that this season has shown that the team can't hide from what they are and what they need to get to where they want to be. That's obviously going to lead to a lot of decisions about who stays and who goes. We're going to look at that in parts 4 and 5, but coming up, we're going to hand out some of AFTN's end of season awards. Yes, it's awards time once again, and we'll be back with that and the first of tonight's 3 of a kind selections after this.
Hi, I'm Lucas Cavallini. You're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Everything that good does
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio, 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, yes, it's back. 3 of a Kind is back this week. We're at the start of parts 3, 4 and 5. We'll play a song. Each song will be linked in some capacity. Your job is to try and work out what that link might be. And if you figure it out by the end of the second song, try and guess what we're going to play to kick off part 5. So that was the first of this week's selections to kick off this part. Going back to 1986, Australian punk band The Hard-Ons with their debut single, Girl in the Sweater. It was originally a non-album single, but you can get it on quite a few of their compilations, including the 1994 album, A Decade of Rock. Did it give you any inkling as to what this week's 3 of a Kind connection might be? See if you can work it out after the song that kicks off part 4. So let's get back to the football chat now, and before we continue delving into what lies ahead for the Whitecaps, it's time to reflect on the year that's been and hand out some of AFTN's end of season awards. The full awards, as always, will be up on the site. It's usually up in 2 parts, but some of the awards won't really be able to get given this year just because the way that things were. Like, favourite away day, I guess that would be early in March then. That would pretty much be it. But we're going to hand out some of our usual awards. So we're going to kick things off with the big one, Player of the Year. The Whitecaps had their awards ceremonies during the week, so we'll talk about some of those awards that were handed out. The Whitecaps Player of the Year and those awards were voted for by the fans, narrowed down by the media, voted for by the fans. Maybe not a big surprise in that case that Best Player Ali Adnan actually won there. I found this one genuinely hard because when I'm looking at criteria for Player of the Year, I'm wanting somebody that's been consistent over the whole season, or at least most of the season. And we just simply have not had that. We've had players that's been good in bursts. We've had players that's been good in different spells, everything like that. I mean, Steve, did you find this an easy one?
No, actually, it was very hard. I kind of, in a weird way, I want to give it to a position because the position was manned by 3 solid, for most of the year, 3 solid goalkeepers. I know 5 overall, but 3. And so I would kind of share it with Crepeau, Thomas Hasal, and Evan Bush, because all 3 of them had very good stretches. If any one of them would have had a full season, I think they would have been fine. So that's why I kind of want to give it to them, but I don't know if that even works. But it's kind of 2020, so who cares how it's supposed to work?
That's an interesting one, actually. I mean, Zach, what's your take on that? Can you give a Player of the Year award to a position where it's been shared by a number of people? And who's your selection for it?
Couple of things. First off, when it's been such an awkward year, which no one would argue that 2020 has been, it's nice to see a creative idea like that. And I think, in one sense, I think it's a good shout at very, very least. However, like we talked about in the past, in past seasons, it is kind of awkward to give an award to I guess maybe that is fair.
No, you usually against giving it to a player of the game when they're having such a bad game. Yeah.
I just mean the Whitecaps keepers have been good. Yeah. I just like when the team doesn't make the playoffs and whatever. I guess like there's nothing else really you could give it to. So I definitely love the creativity, and I would support that. My recommendation, which I'm not gonna lie, is going to be a recurring theme, or at least for a couple categories, is going to be a player. I don't know if everyone's going to know as well as some of your selections, but I'm going to go with the guy named Owen. Owen Goal.
He had a great year.
I think he stood out as just a difference maker.
How many goals did he get in this season?
I can't even remember now. I think it was 6. I think he had at least like 3 for, 3 against. So he played at both ends of the pitch, like more consistently than a lot of other players. So
Yeah, I mean, one of the two big Irish guys that made an impact this year for the Whitecaps. I mean, you had Owen Goal and Al O'Cation.
Oh, that's my other one. That's my other recommendation.
See, we do get top name European guys.
I was going to save that for a different award.
That wasn't who I thought you were actually going to pick for that, so that's interesting. See, when I was trying to work this out, I was looking at all different stats and stuff today, and I've gone back and forth on this. I might end up actually going with what Steve said, because I really, again, I like that creativity. I thought that was fantastic. We'll get some listeners' thoughts as well. We'll put it out on Twitter and get some readers' comments and things as well.
The thing is, it's hard for me to give it to Max. I might even just narrow it down to Hassall and Evan Bush, because Max I think he only played 3 games. Was he injured in the first back to MLS tournament game, or was
he got injured against Seattle, so he would have played 4 games or 3 and a bit.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to give it to him. I would definitely do the Hassall for sure, and Bush really played well that once he was acquired. And started. Yeah.
I mean, I was looking.
But I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with giving it to Max, though, including him in the 4.
Yeah, I was looking at things like who scored. So Cava's got 6, but you look at Cava and you think his discipline let him down big time, and he got better. And you're expecting more though than 6 goals from a guy that you've brought in as your big DP striker.
But he didn't play in a lot of the games too. Like if you look at it, I think he only started 16, maybe. I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 15. And so 6 goals over that.
Yeah.
17 games played. I think going into today, I think it was, and 15 games started.
Don't kid yourselves. Each of those was $1 million goal.
Yeah. But I think over a full season, he might have hit gone past 10 for sure, like 10, 12 goals. I think he would have hit that easily. And I think, and you got to look at it too, like the games, he really didn't look right when he first started playing in the Canadian games. When he was out east, he didn't look right there. He only got going once maybe in the last game against Montreal or the game against Toronto. I can't remember which one. And then really once they got back into the flow of things in the US, that's where they really got going.
Well, that's understandable because he did miss MLS's back, and he's obviously going to be a little bit like rusty, not Tybert, and stuff like that. I mean, he ended up playing in 18, starting 16. That was his final stats there, just a quick look. Then you've got Freddie. He got 4 goals and 5 assists on the year. He was the assist leader. Christian Dahomey, 3 goals and 3 assists. One of the other big assist leaders was David Milinkovic, and Ali Adnan also. Actually, Ali Adnan got another one today, so he got 5 today.
I thought the Colombian had 5 and 5.
What did I say? 4? Yes, sorry, I forgot he's got his second goal. Yeah, so it was 5 and 5. I was looking at my stats before he got that last goal today. So yeah, so I mean, Freddie's got 5 and 5, and I was very close to giving my Player of the Year award nomination to Freddie. But what lets him down was that fact that he was streaky. And he had 6 of those 7 games, as we talked about earlier, where he didn't have any goals or any assists. And if you're wanting a difference maker, it can't be that. So let's... Well, actually, before...
I just want to clarify. For me, the Player of the Year this year is like giving an award to an Employee of the Year, but all the employees are part-timers. Like, none of them really seem like they pulled a full season in.
Yeah.
And it could be because the season was so split up or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel like a full season. So it's hard to give a season of the year. Maybe it's also the fact that none of them are difference makers. Not one of them are true different. And maybe some of them, like Montero, used to be a difference maker, but he's kind of past that prime of being a difference maker. So I think those are the couple of factors where it's really hard to name a Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So let us know, listeners, what you think. I'm not averse to Steve's suggestion there of splitting it between the keepers. I mean, that's good. Some of these other ones are going to be a lot easier. And, well, before we move on to the next one, actually, Ali Adnan, as I mentioned, he got the Whitecaps official Player of the Year. What's your thought on him, Steve? Like, should he be in the conversation for Player of the Year?
Yeah, no, well, I agree. I don't have a problem with being a nomination. I understand why you won too, because it was like you said, it was a fan vote. Some of those people might not even be Whitecaps fans that voted for him. They might be Iraqi national fans. Yeah, no, totally. He's definitely, because he's in that group of Montero and Cavallini and all those other players that you said that have had streaks where they've looked like they've played really well, and there have been games where he was basically subbed off and was showered and in the stands before the game even ended. So yeah, there definitely been ups and downs for every single player on this roster.
Was it a vote on the website? I missed that. Was it a Twitter poll? How did they do this?
It was definitely on Twitter, but I think it was also on the website. So yeah, I mean, when you put things to the public vote, things usually end up in a mess, as I think the last few days have kind of been testament to, as have some of the decisions in reality shows. But anyway, don't get me started on that. Let's move on instead to Young Player of the Year nominee, and we'll start with Zach for this one. I've got mine, and I've got it narrowed down to 2.
I think we all three of us probably have the same choices.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Owen and Al, I would go with Baldissimo.
Steve?
Yeah, Baldissimo for me. It's almost like it's very little. I know who the Whitecaps the vote for, but for me, it's Baldissimo.
Yeah, the Whitecaps, for anyone that didn't know, their official vote went to Ranko Veselinovic, which is that's one way to justify the player that you've just signed. But although, to be fair, theirs wasn't called Young Player. I think it was Most Promising Player. Yeah, most promising that we've spent a transfer fee on and have to kind of justify it. But I'm joking. I do like Ranko. I think he's got a lot of upside. For me, it was between, obviously, Baldy and Hassal. But yeah, Baldissimo for me was the guy that I think totally deserves it. He made 13 appearances altogether, 7 of them starts, 1 goal and 3 assists. And the goal that he got, which will maybe come to next, I think that might be one that we kind of come to. But I think just Baldy's overall performances were great. It's a shame he couldn't play this final game because of yellow card suspension. That's something he maybe needs to work on, but at the same time, I've known him for years, I've watched him for years. All the Baldissimo brothers play the same way. They're tough tackling, they pick up a lot of cards. I wouldn't change it, to be honest. I hope this has been the springboard for him to build on this and to really move on. And we've talked about young players before, and this will be another category that we'll come to later, that whoever we've ended up nominating, their careers kind of sunk under that. So I'm a bit wary about that. But for Young Player of the Year, I think it definitely has to be Baldy.
For me, I agree with that. Hassal, I thought it actually slipped my mind. I wasn't even thinking about Hassal because it's been so long since he played. But he definitely would have been, if he had played the whole season, he would have easily been that. He would have probably taken boeven both awards, Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year. So yeah. But yeah, I completely forgot he was even a young player for some reason. It didn't even cross my mind. But for me, Baldissimo, the how low they were at one point, especially when they were traveling out east in Canada, the losses that they were incurring, the way they were playing, and then when Baldissimo came on the pitch, he almost turned around the whole season. If he had played more regularly, he would be up for Player of the Year too. For me, like the way he had turned around the season. So I think he should be definitely in the plans for next year. And I'm not just talking about roster plans. I mean 18 plans or starting 11 plans. So he should definitely be in there.
Absolutely. He's been outstanding, and I definitely want to see more of him. I'm going to bring this category just a little bit up now, since we were kind of talking about that, which is, who is your Whitecap to watch in 2021? And this is the category that was talking has been a little bit cursed, because we've done it for 9 years. We've had guys like Caleb Clark, Marco Bustos, Davy Norman. There was some young guy, Alfonso Davies, that won it in 2016, and they're like, who talks about him anymore in a Whitecaps capacity?
Who was last year's?
Oh no, I got it. I just looked it up. Last year,
yes.
You always get this, Steve, was Jasser Kamiri.
Oh, was it? Okay. I don't remember who I picked. I think I might have picked the guy that was loaned out. I can't remember. What's his?
Gianfranco?
Yeah, that's who I picked, because I thought that they might go a little young on the back end and be he'd be the 4th or 5th, but he got loaned out, so obviously he wasn't going to be there. The problem player to watch, I'm gonna go again off the board, And I'm going to say, and Michael, you might understand this. Zach, you definitely won't. But I'm going to say Ty Dillinger, a player that's not here. You know why Ty Dillinger? Because number 10. They need a number 10. So whoever they bring in as a number 10, that's my Whitecaps player to watch next year. 10.
If you were watching our video recording of this would make a lot more sense.
No, but because his gimmick was he was 10. He was
he was the
10.
perfect 10.
That's why I use him as the name, because if I have to give a name out, I'm going to name him because he's a 10, and that's what they need.
That's fair.
So again, I'm going to go off the board and give it like a answer that probably nobody was expecting.
I like that you've been good with this. I mean, Baldy obviously jumps out of this one, Zach. But I mean, anyone else that you think is the player to watch from those that we currently know that we've got?
I was going to obviously say Ty Dillinger. So Steve. I did a lot of wrestling research for this podcast. No, I mean, it's. Aside from Baldy, I think, and you've already mentioned in previous categories, it's Thomas Hasal, I think, is one. Because will he? I think, Michael, did you say that MDS or Axel said that only one of Crepeau or Bush will be here next year?
I think it's Axel.
Yeah, Axel said that. But we'll come to that in the next part.
So if that's the case, I would hope that Hasal, assuming his head's good and all that, his legs good and all that, that he would be the number 2, and he would get some chances. He would be a number 2 that they have confidence in to rest the starter or to step in when needed. Red cards and different situations, but or maybe even given certain matches. Like if there was an MLS's back, maybe given the middle match in that, or that kind of thing. Like, I think it's different than maybe some other seasons, other than the one year where Tornaghi was like the Voyageurs Cup keeper until the final. Something like that, where we know he's going to get a bunch of games, a number of games, and so I think he's definitely one to watch in terms of that. Again, assuming that one of those guys leave and he is designated number 2 ahead of Meredith, or Meredith's gone and whatever.
Yeah, I'll save my thoughts on that till we're looking at the goalkeepers in the next part. I'll pick Baldy for this as well, but we'll open to some.
Baldy would be my first choice. Yeah.
If I were to go to a player that's on the roster currently, I would actually go with Dahomey to see what he can bring, because he's shown flashes, and let's see what he can bring in a full season with his family in tow now.
Yeah,
and so that distraction's out of the way, and so let's see what he can do with a full off season as well.
You're on fire tonight. You should shower more often, Steve.
Yeah, I should. My wife tells me that too.
Oh, dear. Right, let's get into some of the other ones quickly, because I don't know where this section went on me. But anyway, we've talked a lot. But game of the season. Now, I mean, it's tough to how down what your criteria for this would be. So let's just go straight to it. Steve, game of the season.
Game of the season for me is like how I felt after the game, how the players felt after the game. So for me, it's the game against Chicago, the last group game, when they were able to qualify for that round of 16, because they spent everything on the pitch. They were able to, and their reaction, my reaction after watching them win the game, because I think previously that we said they had like a 1% chance of making it to the next round or something during that whole week or something like that. We said they had a 1%, and so the fact that they got it over the line for me was probably the game of the year, just because of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout as well, Steve. I'll just throw it in the ring. I'll choose the only Whitecaps win under normal circumstances in the year, which is the away game to LA. I think the season got off to a very poor start with the loss at home, and I think Marc Dos Santos and the coaches and the players fought really hard to get that, even if it was against what turned out to be a really awful
turned out, but at the point at that time, it was considered a huge.
Oh yeah,
happening.
I mean they had Chicharito, who you were thinking. Well, actually, we didn't think. We said he was going to be a bust, but it's like when you've spent that money on a guy and you're playing that team, you're like, oh.
Like when you take 3 points from Chicharito on the second game of his holiday or his tournament or whatever. Yeah, but no, I think that was really significant for them, and could have been something that got them going in the right direction at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that all very good. I mean, I'd narrowed it down. I had 3 games that I thought were in the mix from a positive side, and the game that I think is the most enjoyable to watch, if you take any Whitecaps things out of it, was that 4-3 San Jose loss, just for the batshit craziness of it. I mean, that but I would not put that as our game of the year. The comeback win against LAFC a few weeks ago, the 2-1, that was a good one. The LA Galaxy win, the second game of the season as well. But I agree, I went for that win against Chicago in MLS's back, just because the comeback, there was the lightning delay. It looked like that was it all out. I
forgot about that. I totally forgot about the lightning delay. That was because there was a story to it. That
and they came back, whatever was said during that lightning delay, and it's like they were on fire, possibly because they'd been hit by the lightning. But I mean, that 2-0 win, it was just, they did what they needed to do. It wasn't pretty at times, but I mean, yeah, I think I would go for that. Again, listeners, let us know your nomination for Game of the Season. So we're only going to do 2 more awards in tonight's show, and we'll do some more next week and some more of our fun ones next week as well. But I want to get to Save of the Year. So, I mean, Steve was talking up the goalkeepers there, so we'll come to him in a sec, but we'll kick this one off with going to Zach. Who's your nomination for Save of the Year?
Yeah, it has to be, it's kind of one of those shared ones, like with the goalkeeper. It goes to Greg, Steve, and Jeff for the money they saved on not bringing in proper DPs.
You were so excited. I thought you had a really sensible one, but that is very funny. So, I mean, Steve, then, give us a proper nomination for Save of the Year.
The game against in the round of 16 in the back tournament, Thomas Hasal had a number of saves in there. If you look, I think there was even a 45 second to a minute clip of all the saves he made in that game. But there was one particular one, if you watch the game highlights again, when the cross came over, he was on the left. He was on the left post. He had to go all the way across to the right post, and he was able to stop Kinda from heading the ball into the near post. And he had to basically go the width of the post on that cross in order to get across. So that's the one that I felt like was the biggest save for me.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I can't remember the game, and I ran out of time today to look this up, but I seem to remember Evan Bush having a double or triple save in one of the last couple of games. So that sticks in my mind as Save of the Year. Every year we do this, and I'm like, I need to write these down over the course of the year so that I start to remember them, and I never do. So let's move on to our final award that we're going to cover tonight, and it's Goal of the Year. And let's go to Steve to kick this one off.
Yeah, so there's the obvious one. It is. I'm going to let Zach announce it because I think it's basically all of us. But I'm going to give a couple of nominations to other potential ones. They're not better than the one that's going to win it, but they are good goals. The Ali Adnan free kick, I thought that was a nice goal that we haven't seen very often. And then a couple of goals that were not spectacular goals, but they were like huge goals in the wins and everything. Was the Cavallini goal against RSL to get the 2-1 win, and then the second game of the year, the Ricketts scoring against LA Galaxy. That was a nice one because I think it was Raposo that actually kind of got it to Ali Adnan, kind of curled it around a defender, got it to Ali, who got to basically to the end line, and then crossed it back in. And Ricketts' finish wasn't that easy. He could easily put it right back into the goalkeeper, but he actually got it to the far post. And that, I think those goals are good shout-outs. But here's Zach with the obvious goal of the year.
Well, I just want to say before I talk about the goal of the year that if we open this up to a public opinion poll, it would obviously be won by Ali Adnan's kick. But no, it's obviously Baldissimo's belter at BC. It was BC Place too, right?
Yeah, it was BC
yeah,
Place.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that and the celebration were both great.
Yeah, that was the one. That was the free kick where I'd never seen it before, but it was for the first time I saw a TFC player like lying on the ground behind the wall. I had never seen that before. I don't know if you guys remember.
I have seen that before.
I've never seen that before,
yeah.
so that was the first for me. I was going, "What the hell is going on here?"
I think the first time I saw it was the Champions League final
Oh, really? When? How long ago?
this year,
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
which was a month before they did it there. Now everyone in the Bundesliga, if you watch the Bundesliga, like not every, but most of the teams do it now.
I've seen it like going way back. I can't even remember where or when. I genuinely don't know if it was locally watching VMSL or if it was something on the TV. But I've definitely seen teams do it. I'm also going for Baldy for that goal as well. But let us know your nominations, as with all the awards. That is it for our award chat for this episode. We'll be back with some more and some fun ones next week. But we're going to get into the meat and potatoes now of what end of the season stuff is. Who should stay? Who should go? Who's in? Who's out? Who's on the bubble? Who should we keep? Who should we trade? Who should we release? We've called this a lot over the years, but we'll be back chatting about that after this.
Hi, I'm Maxime Crépeau from the Vancouver Whitecaps, and you're listening to the AFTN Show.
Baseball, basketball, wiener dog, short shorts, cigarette, surfboard, ping pong, rugby ball, wiener dog, skiing down on the beach, sports, 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 beach ball, volleyball, naked girls and naked boys do the dance down on the beach.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the second of this week's 3 of a kind selections. Going back to 2018, just 2 years away. Feels so much longer, doesn't it? That was a song by Swedish punk band the Viagra Boys, taken from their album Streetworms, and that was Sports. Definitely recommend you checking out the video for that one on YouTube. It's a fun video. It's a great song. Sports. Can't beat it. Maybe we'll have to start looking at some other sports to cover on the show now that the Whitecaps season has wrapped up. Although if it's like previous years, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the off-season than we sometimes do during the actual season. So like I said, that was the second of tonight's songs, following on from part 3's The Girl in the Sweater by the Hard-Ons. That was Viagra Boys with Sports. Have you worked out what the connection could be? If you have, what do you think we're going to kick the next part off with? Find out soon. So we're going to look now at, as I said before the break, the meat and potatoes at the end of the season, where we have to decide some players are just frankly not good enough to help the Whitecaps get to where they want to get, which is into the playoffs primarily, and then hopefully start to close the gap against the teams that are above us. MDS has said he feels that this time away, spending so much close proximity with the players, that it's actually been great because he's got to know the players both from an on-the-pitch way and also what their character and personalities and everything is off the pitch. So I don't know how much of that is going to play into some of the decisions, but you could say it's been a tough season to evaluate some players. MDS disagrees with that. He thinks it's actually been a a season where you'll learn a lot about players with how they've coped with adversity, because genuinely, who knows what 2021 is going to bring at this stage. We hope for the best. A lot of that could depend on vaccines and rapid testing, so I mean everything's up in the air just now. In this part, we're going to look at goalkeepers and defenders, and 5 goalkeepers on the Whitecaps books for this season: Max Crepeau, Thomas Hasal, Evan Bush, Brian Meredith, and Isaac Boehmer. Now, Isaac Boehmer, I think we'll start with him. If he's going to still be around as the third keeper and you've got the chance to loan him out, I think that would make sense. But then are they going to be wary about doing something like that, considering exactly what happened to their goalkeepers this year? But I mean, he's a young guy that you feel has to get some playing time to develop.
Yeah, I have them keeping him as the third keeper, and it's just exactly what you said. If it's 2 things, if it's doable for him to do a short-term loan to, for example, the Canadian Premier League, especially somewhere where they know where he would have the opportunity to actually play, but it could also be recalled should there be a significant injury to one of the other 2 keepers. That would be the most ideal. Also, I would see him as being the number 1.5 or number 2 keeper for the reserve team that's supposed to start up next year. And so that's where I have Boehmer on my list. And you want to go one at a time, or do you want me to give you my whole list?
No, we'll keep with that just now. For goalkeepers, what I'm actually going to do, though, is I'm going to just throw the other 4 into the mix, and then we'll just have a general goalkeepers discussion. So I'll just quickly kick this off. Max Crepeau, I think we all would want to keep him, but there's a question there. Will they maybe sell him? I don't think they will. Now, Zach talked about Thomas Hasal in the last part as player to watch, potential young player of the year, everything like that. I think what he showed this year, though, means that he has to play. And I don't know that he'll get the playing time that he really needs to develop here. And I would loan him out. And I know that might not be popular amongst some of the fan base, but I wouldn't keep him here for 2021. I'd loan him to a CPL team to be their starting keeper, much like James Pantemis going away with Valor FC. Obviously, you don't know what the CPL season's going to look like for one thing, but I would loan him out and I wouldn't keep him here. I'd keep Crepeau as the number 1. Then I guess you've got a toss-up then of Bush or Meredith. I'd let Meredith go and keep Bush, but I know he's on a big ticket and I know that that's probably not going to happen. But I've liked Bush for a while. I like him. I like what he's done in the run-in here. I like what he brings to the locker room. He's got that experience. He's a union rep. He's very outspoken in that regard as well. I'd be happy to have Crepeau, Bush, Boehmer as my 3 that's on the books, loaning out Hasal and letting Meredith go. So that's my selection. Steve, what have you got?
I have Meredith out for sure. Boehmer obviously stays. That's clear. Hasal, I think they can find enough playing time, and based on this year, you know that keepers are not a solid, like they're not as durable as people think, especially with the way MLS plays, the way people attack the net. So I would keep Hasal as the backup because I think you're going to need him eventually, and Crepeau as your starter. Again, if you're going to sell Crepeau, which I agree with you, I don't think it's going to happen based on the fact that he's been injured for most of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. So I would keep Crepeau. I think Bush can be used as a pawn to get something else in return. You're talking about MLS quality players in other positions. They can get somebody like that for Bush based on what he's shown in the rundown from this season as it ended. Is there an expansion draft at the end of the year? I don't remember.
That's a good thing to mention now because Austin's coming in next year.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
he might leave via the expansion draft. You never know because he is probably one of the better number 2 keepers at this point. That's not going to be protected.
I tell you, I'd have Bush as a number 1 with Austin if you want to add some experience to your back line there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Zach, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mostly agree with you guys. Like I said, Boehmer I think needs to be the number 3, and then short-term loan or the number 2 on the reserve team. I think Hasal needs to be Vancouver's number 2 next year, but they're number 1 for the reserve team whenever it doesn't impact, being on the bench for the first team.
Yeah, you also don't know how much that's going to get off the ground. That's my worry about that. Like, you can have the best laid plans, and then that doesn't get up and running, and then Hassal's just not got the playing time that he needs.
I mean, yeah, obviously you can't plan perfectly in a pandemic world, but you think that they'd have a plan by now for this thing that they've been working on, I think, pre-pandemic. They would know if it's going to happen, not going to happen, whatever. So assuming that the reserve league is going to happen and they have faith that it can happen in the ideal way that they're hoping it will, that's what I would do. And then I would have, I don't know if Meredith has any time left or not. I release him or trade him or mutually agree to end his contract or whatever the best option is there, whatever you can get the most out of there. And then I would keep Crépeau, and it's not even so much. I think they should. I just think they will for multiple reasons. One, like you guys said, they can't sell him coming off an injury. He needs to come back from the injury and show that he doesn't have any lasting effects from it. Two, he's cheaper than Bush, so that bodes well for him and the Whitecaps. And then I can't remember my third one was like you guys said. I think you can get something for Bush, or I don't know if it's Bush's right. I think Bush's contract is up too, isn't it, Michael? But they would hold his rights.
Yeah, it was a short term thing. So yeah, they would hold his rights. They can I mean, he might even be entering free agency as well, I think, because he's got a lot of time in the league. So I mean, there's all that to come into it.
So I think it's Bomer, Hassal, Crépeau. It sticks with their whole ethos of trying to have Canadians and Canadian national team players and future Canadian national team players, and it's the cheaper option, I would think. And then you move on the two Americans.
The only interesting kind of thing to throw in is what we mentioned earlier. The Axel had said that, I think it was on the radio, both Bush and Crépeau won't be back next year. It'll just be one of them. Now, normally, you'd think he would say, oh, no, Crépeau's our number one. He's the guy that's going to be back. Evan's just a short-term thing. Now, that might just be because they didn't want Evan to feel he's just a short-term thing, because when I asked him about that, he said those discussions hadn't been had. But I just thought that was an interesting way of wording it, Zach.
No, yeah. And the one thing I've heard to say about Crépeau is I think they think that they can market him because of, the triple save and the record-setting stuff from the really bad year. I think they feel like they can market him, and he has value in the community for them. So that's another reason why they think they'll keep him. Yeah, it is weird, but again, we don't know what actually has been gone on behind the scenes. Someone like Bush can say, yeah, we haven't had that conversation. It doesn't mean his agent hasn't had that conversation, right?
And the thing is they don't want to acquire a player and say, yeah, he's just temporary. It's not good. It's not good for the fan base to hear that, and it's not good for the player to hear that. So they obviously wanted to have it out there. They even had a conversation with Bush and told him that, we're just going to say that this is the case, but we know you're a temporary thing. We don't want to put you out in the public like that, so people don't have that record. So I really, even when he said it, I put very little into that because I knew that they were going to look at all the options and at that time I thought maybe there would be somebody out there that might be interested in Crépeau, especially in Europe. But now that the season's over, I see him coming back for sure, Crépeau.
I mean, one thing we haven't looked at is there could be a club interested in Hassal, and he could maybe get a move somewhere, but I don't know. We'll talk about that a little bit more, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. Let's move to the defence, the back four, hopefully most of the time, not three at the back. We know that does not work out well from a Whitecaps point of view. Now, the team as a whole, and I know you can't blame all this on the defenders, but 44 goals against. Only teams in the West that's got worse are San Jose and the LA Galaxy. But you look at the defenders, and I think there is a lot that you want to bring back. And it was the same last year when they had a bad year as well, and it's trying to just balance that. So let's go positionally. We'll start with the fullbacks. Right back, we only have Jake Nerwinski. So I'll just throw this to both of you just for a quick thing on that. We'll start with Zach. I mean, I think Jake's back unless you use him as trade bait, which we seem to have said every year. But I think he needs somebody there to challenge him.
Yeah, definitely. My question for you is, do we like George is also listed as a right back, right?
Yeah, I put George Makumbilwa as a midfielder, but we could talk about him just now as well, because I feel if he didn't get any look at all this year, I think it's hard to keep him around and talk about him maybe being involved in the first team. He's a guy that they either need to cut or they need to get him out on loan.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to get rid of Jake as much as I don't think he is, unless the other 10 players on the team are at a higher level. I don't think he's going to be your right back on like a top MLS team. You know what I mean? And so, but the thing is, I don't think they're going to get rid of him. They like him. Like, did he get an award this year or was that last year? I know St. Ricketts got one of the.
I think he got the Jock McDonald Unsung Hero Award.
Yeah, that's what he got. That yeah, they really like him. They think he's also. They think he's marketable.
Yeah,
and so
I mean, MDS talked after the game that he still has a lot to work on in the game, and Jake actually said that himself. He said, "I'm 26 now, but it's like 26-year-olds still need to work and develop their game as well." So he knows. Basically, MDS just wants him to be more dynamic, attacking. But I mean, he's coming back, Steve.
For Jake, I'm not 100% sure. For me, he's like, it would be on the bubble for me, only because that he might be able to bring something else from some other team, especially like we said, there's expansion teams coming in. If they could maybe bring in that MLS type player in another position and improve the right back through a different way, bring in an improvement there, and then substitute like somewhere else. That's where they have to play around and see what value does Jake have in the MLS. Like international players, it's hard to trade them, but American players are very easy to trade probably, and you probably get more because international players are a dime a dozen, but a solid American starter might not be hard to find. So if they could find a right back, an international right back, and then trade Jake for like a American center back or an American midfielder or a winger or something like that, that might be more beneficial. So it's about balancing that and seeing where you can get what.
That's a good. I want to say I agree with you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Left back. We've got two left backs, Ali Adnan, Christian Gutierrez. I've liked what I've seen from Gutierrez. Ali Adnan is Ali Adnan, designated player, can be impactful. I don't think they're going to sell him. He might, unless he wants to go, I don't think they're going to sell him. So I think both of those guys come back next year. Any disagreement on that?
No, I 100% agree. And I think Ali should be used in some games in order to give him like almost a mini break. Play him up top so he doesn't have to worry about the defensive responsibility. So more balance Gutierrez in there, give him more games and rotate it around so you have you could bring in, let's say it's a Dahomey or something playing the left side. So one game Dahomey plays left, Ali plays left back. Then maybe once out of every 3 games, you play Ali up there, play Gutierrez as your fullback, and have Dahomey on the bench. So kind of rotate that kind of left side so that way everybody stays fresh because we don't know what the schedule is going to be like next year too. We don't know.
Yes.
Are they going to play 3 games every week and then have a week off? Are they going to be doing that way more often, or are they going to even be more condensed? Because like you said before, if they start the season later in the year or whatever, and if something else happens where it gets shut down, what kind of schedule are they going to come up with at that point?
Yeah. I've liked what I've seen from Gutierrez, Zach, and I would even have put him in as one to watch for next year if I thought he was going to get a lot more minutes than I think he probably will get, but I've liked him. He looks very solid.
Yeah, I think Gutierrez is a stay for sure. I think Ali Adnan, 36-year-old Ali Adnan is someone that you could that could potentially leave. So I guess using the language of this setup, I'd say he's on the bubble because he could go. I think if was it his agent was hanging out with Inbaum's agent and all that. Like I think there is going to be. I think his agent's going to be looking at least for possibilities or opportunities for him, and so I think there's at least a chance that they get offers, and if they get an offer that's too good, I don't think they're going to. Say no. He's staying here, right?
No, I agree with that. Him staying, I think the Whitecaps will want to keep him, but I think if he goes, it's Ali's choice to go or not.
Yeah. We'll round this bit off. We're looking at the 5 centre-backs, and we won't delve into Godoy and Veselinovic because they've paid transfers fees for them. They're going nowhere. Yeah, they're definitely back. So then we're looking at 3. You've got Fashioneri. He was loaned out to Ottawa early this year. I could see another loan for him, or if they want to keep him in the mix. And then I think you've got the 2 real interesting ones, which is Derek Cornelius and Jasser Khmiri. So before I give my thoughts on that, we'll go to Zach for these 2. What's your thoughts on them?
I think I've shared on the show in the past, MDS is very high on, when he brought him in, he was very high on Jasser Khmiri. He saw a lot of upside in him. I know last year was obviously marred mostly by injury. This year has been, I think, some injury, but also
marred mostly by injury.
Yeah, but by injury. But he had a little bit of sparkle of some good moments. But he had some things that were like some games that were really, really concerning, where he was really, really poor. And I think because of the injury stuff, I think he's going to be here. But if he is here, I think then you maybe need 5 center backs to feel more comfortable because of his being prone to injury. Long term, I guess for the player, I hope that he can live out the potential he has, and that people like MDS and the Tunisian youth teams and national team have seen in him. But it feels a long way. Those heights feel a long way away. I think right now. Who's the other one again?
Derek.
Derek. Oh, Derek. I think Derek's staying. Derek, I don't know if he would have a chance to go anywhere, or like he would have people seeking him. And he whatever. But if you're the Whitecaps, I think you want to keep Derek Cornelius. I think it's been a little bit bewildering to some people how MDS has chosen to use him. And so hopefully in next year can be more of a normal year, or more of a consistent year for the schedule and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll see maybe more what he wants from him and where he fits in. But I think if you're the Whitecaps, he has to be a stay. I can't see why you would want to not have him. If you're Cornelius, if you're not guaranteed, is not probably an option, but if you're not maybe promised or given the hope of more playing time, I could see why he would want to move on to somewhere where he would get the playing time.
For me, Cornelius, I agree 100% with Zach about his points about, it's really if he wants to stay or does he want to move on. But I think the Whitecaps should want to keep him. I think he's shown enough to warrant a stay. Khmiri, I think, will be dependent on how good their film editor is and how many highlights they could in a package where they could possibly hoodwink a team into breaking even on him. Because after 2 seasons, I don't see much of a future for him here. Even when he was healthy, there were moments where he was doing stuff that really, to the bewilderment of his fellow backline mates, that they were probably wondering what he's doing, because he constantly broke line where they had to cover for him. And I just don't feel like that really works in MLS.
Yeah, very valid points. For me, if I was making the decision, I would bring Cornelius back and I would let Khmiri go. I have a feeling the Whitecaps will do the opposite, and I think they'll let Cornelius go and they'll just look to bring in another centre-back, and I think they'll keep Khmiri hanging around. Last question I've got for you in this part. So we've gone through all the defenders and the goalkeepers, and we're not making really changes. So that should be concerning, should it not, Steve, considering how many goals they've given up and how bad they looked at times this year?
But for me, the biggest changes need to be put in a position that are above those defenders that will be able to make those defenders better. And that's where I think the changes need to be made. For me, they need to improve one of the fullback positions, either right back or left back. They need a better play out of the right back spot for me, especially attacking and defending. But the midfield that we're going to talk about next is the key for me that will help solidify this team.
I mean, I'd bring in a right back and possibly a centre back, Zach. I mean, would you have concerns about the defence next year if they don't really make big changes, which going through this, it doesn't look like they would be.
Yeah, Steve's right. It's like we've said already in this show, the midfield is what needs to be sorted out, and that'll impact. That has a great impact on the defense. And so I do agree with you, Michael. They need at least one starting or potential starting right back for sure. And if they're moving any, aside from Fashionary being on loan, if they're moving any of the center backs, that needs to be replaced. And like I said before, there could be a potential for a replacement for Ali Adnan, whether that's Gutierrez taking a spot and a backup being brought in, or someone maybe even better than Gutierrez being brought in.
Well, we'll see if the Whitecaps agree with our decisions on the goalkeepers and the defenders. That is it for this part. We'll be back with the final part of tonight's show, where we have a look at the Whitecaps midfielders and forwards after this.
Hi, I'm Toussaint Ricketts, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the final part of tonight's AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it was the last of this week's Three of a Kind selection from a Norwegian band, Turbo Negro. So we've had an Australian band, a Swedish band, and now a Norwegian band. We're certainly travelling the world for this week's selection. That was a song from their 2001 album, Ass Cobra, and that was I Got Erection. So did you manage to work out what the link was? We kicked off part 3 with the Hard-Ons and Girl in the Sweater. We kicked off part 4 with Viagra Boys, Sports. And we kicked off part 5, Turbo Negro, I Got Erection. Hard-Ons, Viagra, Erection, yes. In a week where there's been all this talk about elections, I thought I'd bring you 3 songs all about erections. Did you manage to work out this week's link? If you did, well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. If you didn't, we'll be back with another 3 of a kind selection next week. So let's get into the final part of our Whitecaps roster analysis, our usual end of season thing that we do. We're turning our attention to the midfield first, and I've got 9 midfielders written down here. That includes Simon Coline, who's basically gone to Italy, so I think we can kind of rule him out of the discussion. You've got Michael Baldissimo, so he's definitely coming back. We talked about him in the last part. Don't really need to talk about him again. Russell Tybert's not going anywhere. Contract extension. Whether he should or not is a whole other discussion, but probably no need to talk about him either. I'll look at a couple of the young guys first. Patrick Metcalf saw a little bit of time on the pitch. Georges Mukambilwa, Damiano Pasil, who made the shortest debut in MLS history today. I think he was on the pitch for a whole 2 seconds. I was so excited, I was starting to tweet, I'm really glad Damiano's getting a run out, and then the referee blew for full time, so I didn't get to do that. But
yeah, and the referee almost made my Villain of the Year award for doing that. You almost put the person who I had nominated. We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah. So if you're looking at Pasil, Mukambilwa, and Metcalf, I think I would maybe let George go, but I know he's quite highly thought of. So, I mean, he needs to get loaned. Paseo as well maybe needs to get loaned. Metcalf maybe loaned. What's your thoughts on that, Steve?
I'm not really concerned too much about those players right at this point. I think that they're going to be either, whether it's them or some other academy players that they sign, that will be holding down those final roster spots in the lineup. So for them, if they stay, that's good. It's all depending on what MDS sees in them, and does he see them having a future here? If he does, because some of them, like Metcalf, some might be considering them being signed because they were so short of midfielders, especially like after the tournament or during the tournament, because it's sold Inbaum away at that point, so they were really short, so they needed some players. So that's why I'm saying, like, those kind of things are really up in the air. I almost put them on the bubble. I'm sure one or two of them definitely will be back, but I don't know which ones at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve. But like you said, Michael, if they are kept, I think loan possibilities need to be looked at for all of them. George, can you remind me, Michael? He didn't go to the Orlando tournament, right?
No, he wasn't able to because of a medical condition.
Okay.
So yeah, that was tough for him. He was really looking forward to going, and he might have got a chance on the pitch there. And of course, when I'm talking about loan deals as well, we should always keep in our mind that there is going to be this MLS reserve team, so they are going to get a run out here. So we do need players for that. When I'm talking about loans, I am more thinking that this might not get off the ground for the Whitecaps next year, depending on border. But yeah,
yeah, for sure, because I think all three of those guys would play in the reserve team.
Definitely.
For sure. The health thing for George, that's all sorted. Like that,
as far as I know, yeah, it's all good.
Because it was disappointing not to see when we found out he wasn't going, and that he hasn't really had much of a. Feels like he hasn't had much of a chance in the first team at all. So, I would like to. Maybe the reserve thing is the perfect opportunity to see what he can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like there maybe needs to be. Because he's a little bit older, right? Like, he's even older than Baldissimo, right? So it feels like they need to decide whether or not they're going to use him or not. Like, if you're him, you probably want to know, like, hey, what's going on? But
yeah, I mean, if they don't, he'll certainly get snapped up by a CPL team. I think that goes without saying. There's three midfielders really for us to talk about, and I'm going to lump two of them together, which is Bikel and Owusu. But before we get to that, I want to start with Andy Rose, and we'll start with Zach. Do you bring him back? Man of experience, versatile, can play a number of positions, good locker room leader.
Yeah, for sure, because I think all three of those guys would play in the reserve team.
Definitely.
For sure. The health thing for George, that's all sorted. Like that.
As far as I know, yeah, it's all good.
Because it was disappointing not to see when we found out he wasn't going, and that he hasn't really had much of a. Feels like he hasn't had much of a chance in the first team at all. So, I would like to. Maybe the reserve thing is the perfect opportunity to see what he can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like there maybe needs to be, because he's a little bit older, right? Like, he's even older than Baldissimo, right? So it feels like they need to decide whether or not they're going to use him or not. Like, if you're him, you probably want to know, like, hey, what's going on? But
yeah. Well, if we look at Owusu, he did not play in the last game against the Galaxy because he was over in Ghana getting paperwork sorted. So I think that might indicate that he's definitely coming back.
But one thing about Rose too, I forgot to mention this. If there is a chance for him to come back, if he's going to be placed as like the fifth or fourth running center back. If they want to bring him back as a center back, then he could come back. I don't see that happening, but I've seen crazier things.
I mean, Zach, let's look at Bikel and Owusu for you then before I give my thoughts on this. Would you bring both of them back, one of them back, neither of them back?
I think they're going to bring both of them back, partly because I think their deals are guaranteed for more than 1 year. And I don't know that there'd be a high demand to move them within the league, and moving outside the league, I think it's probably not an option, especially in a pandemic world. So I think they're both going to be back, which is, again, one of the reasons why I think if Rose is out of the contract, you don't do anything to bring him back. But they do need to make some drastic upgrades. So, like, if you bring both of them back, the player who replaces Rose is maybe that DP number 10 type midfield general or whatever Maestro a la Valeri or whoever you were talking about before. And if you do that, then I still think you need an upgrade on those guys. But maybe that comes in by adding another, like maybe if the number 10 is more considered an attacker, then maybe the Rose position is the box to box guy they need. But I mean, there's a difference for me what I think they're going to do and what they should do. Because let me splice that. That's what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to keep probably two of those. Actually, they're probably going to keep Rose because I think they like him. But I think, let's say they keep those two guys. What I think they should do is they should bring in probably 3 new midfielders that are starters, a 6 and 8 and a 10.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening.
No, I see them bring at least 2. What I always do is I go by what they should do, because what they are going to do is sometimes too depressing.
What I'm looking at is if MDS is talking about bringing in 3 to 4 key additions, we've got 29 guys on the roster, so we have to move some of them out. And you're starting to look at this roster and you're going, well, who's moving out? So unless they've got a bit of wiggle room with the MLS Reserve League and the homegrown guys and they can free up some spots that way, I mean, you have to look at the midfield as an area that could get cut along with centre-backs. But obviously you still need to have some decent centre-backs on your books. But then again, that's where Rose can come in as your kind of 5th centre-back maybe, or 4th centre-back. I'd bring Andy Rose back. I personally would, because I just think his versatility is going to be needed if the team's in a crisis. I actually have him pegged as maybe moving into a coaching role at some point with the Whitecaps. It's something I've spoken to him about, and he'd be interested down the line. Get him involved with the academy, get him to kind of do something like that maybe. I mean, who knows? So there's that.
The thing is that you're talking about you have to unload players. Remember, the goalkeeper position, you're probably going to lose 2 players right there.
Oh, yeah,
so that opens up 2 roster spots right there.
Yes.
You don't normally lose 2 players and don't have to add anybody, and you lose 2 players and you still have the right number of players in the lineup.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had ended up with 5 goalkeepers on the final roster.
I mean, Bikel and Owusu, neither of them have impressed me enough this year to bring back. My big concern with Bikel is the number of cards that he picks up, and I don't know that we can afford to keep getting him doing that. But I think he's better than Owusu for me. I don't know. I don't particularly like either, and if I was really having a choice, I'd bring neither of them back.
It's hard to judge it this year because it's been really nuts and everything like that. The thing is if I remember correctly, Owusu played really well when he was playing alongside Inbaum. I thought he played better then. Once Inbaum left, his play did go. So maybe having better midfielders to play with will improve his play. That's my only thing where I would give a little bit of an edge to him. But for me, they're so even. The one thing about Bikel is that he does have the versatility to play right back.
Yes.
At a pinch. So you could use him because both of these guys for me at this point are not at the starting capacity. They're really off the bench guys. Because I do think, like what Zach said before, you might need two or 3 starters. For me, one of the starters is Baldissimo. So you need 2 starters, and then you have guys on the bench.
Yeah. Let's move finally onto the forward line. And just for the sake of this, I've put the likes of Dahomey, Milinkovic, Raposo in with forwards. Just all attackers. I've got 7 altogether. So we know Cava is coming back unless he wants to move on or someone comes and make a bid for him. That's unlikely. He's coming back. So he's here. Ricketts signed his contract extension for next year. Just to touch on Ricketts though, I was surprised how little he was really used this year. I think he could have been used a lot more and a lot more effectively.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think in a more normal season, I think obviously the rest of the roster is different. But he was so effective at TFC in this league, right? Now, obviously, he had far superior service, and he was usually coming in and running at tired legs. But I think the Whitecaps could use him in that, and I think they can get more out of him than they have been so far, in a similar way that TFC did, even without the powerhouse of a squad that TFC has in comparison to Vancouver.
Yeah, I think he's the ideal backup for a guy like Cavallini. I don't think I really wish they would not put him on the wing as much. I think he'd be, if Cavallini in the 70th, 80th minute has tired, maybe they're defending the lead even, he'd be a really good player to bring in there. So what? I don't get it.
Defending a lead? What?
Like having a guy that can run at the.
It can happen.
Oh, that's what you're talking about. So, well, they were defending a lead today, weren't they?
Yes.
So
and in all 9 of their wins.
Yeah. So he's a guy that can actually like run at the midfielders, disrupt play and stuff like that. So I think he definitely has value as being that backup for Cavallini.
They survived the most dangerous lead in football today.
True, and added to it. Christian Dahomey, I think we all know he's coming back, and hopefully we can see the best of him now that he's fully settled with his family, which it must have been a terrible time for him. He stopped diving as much as well, so that's a plus. Theo Bair, do you both have him coming back?
I think it's really a matter of fit at this point. Do they see him as a winger? Do they see him as a striker? He's still fairly young. He's not that old, but he definitely, I think he's got the stuff to play striker. It's a matter of whether they want to put him in that position, because he's had moments where he's shown that he can make moves and create his own shot, but it's not a consistent level right now.
He's got moves like Jagger. No, if you're Theo Bair, you gotta, I think you read the writing on the wall, and you want to move somewhere else. You want to go somewhere where you're going to be able to play more, even if it's not at the MLS level. And so even if it's I don't know if you want to go to the CPL at this point or yet, or whatever.
I think you should go to the lower German leagues right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think if he could go to a lower league in Europe and try to make the breakthrough there, I think that would be more enjoyable for him as a player, and would probably be a better experience than what he's had this year for sure. And last year was his second year, right? This is his third year. So yeah, these last 2 years, I don't think it's been very enjoyable for him.
I think he should go to that Belgium team that Jonathan David was on. Yeah, I think why not? They might feel like that there's another Canadian player that maybe develop and make money off of. So why not?
I didn't want to lead you guys by saying anything before I mentioned that, but I just think Bair is going to go, whether it's from the Whitecaps releasing him outright or selling him, because obviously they're going to want to try and recoup some of his development fees and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think Theo will be on the team next year, which brings us to another young Canadian, Ryan Raposo, who started strong, disappeared off the face of the earth, got a few run-outs, and he's another one that I don't quite get how he was used, because I think he could have been used a lot better than he was.
Yeah, he had moments, especially early on. And the thing is, what really surprised me was, especially during the MLS back tournament, they didn't seem to put him in there. And I thought there were like a lot of defenders that might have been tired in those later games playing in that kind of environment, where a fast guy like Raposo could have really taken advantage of, and he was never put in those positions. So it was very odd to me, their selection process of why they didn't put him in there. Because even if you think he's not as good as the players you have on the pitch, he's rested. He has the legs to possibly get something going.
And Michael, I agree with both of you that it felt like he wasn't used enough this year, especially in a year where you're playing with a congested schedule the way they were. It felt like he was the kind of player you needed to bring on to run at players and to try and open up games or get them back into games or help them counter in games where they were leading or whatever. And so it's surprising me they didn't use him more, because I agree with you, Michael. He was quite effective earlier on in the season, and definitely in the preseason. Like you said earlier, set up the goal away to help set up the goal away to the Galaxy. And yeah, so I think do
you see him back?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about I do see him back. Unless they need to free up, like we were talking before, they need to free up a spot to bring in a difference maker. Otherwise, I think you bring him back because he's got to be he's Generation Adidas, right?
No, I don't think he's Generation Adidas. I'm almost sure he's not.
Anyways,
I'm not sure because he was taken really early, so he might.
But he's not on a high ticket either, so it's not like it's costing him that much against the cap.
Exactly.
The thing is, they have enough players to get rid of in order. He's one of those guys that they could develop into a role player.
Yeah.
And being somebody strong off the bench, even if it's not, if it wasn't enough this year, maybe next year he'll be able to take up that role.
So yeah,
I hope he's back.
Yeah, there's other players in the forward positions that I think they'll get rid of. So
yeah, I don't see him and Bear back. I think it's one or the other, and I think it'll be Ryan that they'll keep for at least another year just to have a look at him. So Montero, does anyone think he's actually going to be back?
How many years left on his contract?
1 month.
Okay.
So
no. Then he's not. Unless he takes a massive pay cut, it's not going to happen.
He's another guy that I think would be a good fit for like Austin in the expansion draft.
Yeah, all the GAM. They can use all that GAM to buy him down.
It went so well for Cincinnati to get all those former Whitecaps, so why not Austin try to do it?
So that brings us to our last one then. David Milinkovic. He's here on loan from Hull City. He's had flashes. He seems to really like working with MDS. Whenever he's had any big contribution, he runs straight over to hug MDS on the bench. I'm on the fence about him. It's like he's one of those guys that's definitely on the bubble. I could see them bringing him back. I could see him doing well. Has he shown enough for you though, Steve, to make that move?
Yeah, no, he's kind of on the bubble for me right now. Only, especially considering he's on a loan player. Like you can make that final choice. He might be in his final year with Hull City as well. So if that's the case, if it's a free transfer, then maybe you do bring him back. But if he's not, then if it's going to cost you money, then definitely not worth the investment there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. There's no way they're paying a transfer fee.
Yeah,
Milinkovic.
He's not been consistent enough, but he has shown glimpses. Could he be better if we have a number 10 and a better midfield? I don't know. I'm really torn. If he comes back, great. If he doesn't come back, great. He's just one of those guys. Yeah.
Is he? You can include this if you want. Is he this year's Venuto or Bangura?
No, I think he's been better. I think he's been better than them. Yeah. Those guys were really like off and on. Like this year, Milinkovic has shown more than those guys did.
Yeah. I mean, in future shows in the coming weeks, we'll talk about the whole scouting of the Whitecaps, because it does feel like some of it has not been great and whether this can improve. We'll also hear like from MDS and from Axel Schuster over the coming weeks as well, just about their plans for the off-season. But that is it for our chat around who should stay, who should come back. Let us know your thoughts on who you feel should come back and who should go. We've had a lot of feedback on Twitter. I'm going to save that though for next week's show. But we still have time to bring you this week's Wavelength. And I'm pretty sure it's a song that everybody, not even just the majority, but everybody's probably going to hate this. It's a difficult listen, so you might want to fast forward 3 minutes. It's by British metalcore band Bring Me the Horizon. It's a song from their second album, Suicide Season. I've been saving it for this very moment. We get to bring you it tonight. It's called Football Season is Over. Bring me the horizon there. Football season is over. Hopefully you still have some speakers in place. I did warn you. It is metalcore. It's very loud. Some may say unlistenable. I know Mike Mead that'll be listening will. But there we go. I just wanted to play that. It seemed great to sum up our anger at just missing the playoffs. That is it for this week's show. Before we go, just let everyone know where they can find you online, starting with yourself, Steve.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
For me, it's at Zachary AM. And time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, this show, as usual, got a little bit away from us, or away from me. That's what happens. I'm Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. If you've any interest in Scottish football, check out our East 5 podcast, Glory Days of Gold. You can find that on the Scottish AFTN, aftn.co.uk. And as always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000. We're way off that. But subscribe if you can and turn on notifications so if we do any live shows in the coming weeks, you'll know when they go live. But thanks everyone for taking part tonight. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time, take care and mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.
EF